But one of the things about farming is, I guess you have to, not only are you dealing with all that kind of junk, but you're dealing with farming, which is itself, is is a sort of insane proposition. And this is a brief little section about that. Not every farmer enjoys the absurd. You have to be a bit deranged to even consider taking up farming. And the farmer, what happens, and you always see that in films and in interviews and so on, there's a sort of real laconic humor that farmers develop after all the years on the land. You have to be a bit deranged to even consider taking up farming. As the old farmer said, farming is tough because it's so close to the ground. Faced with dead birds, the progress traps of human culture, the vagaries of weather, intransigent government regulators, clueless customers, and insane income tax forms, farming cultivates a dry wit and patience, an almost Buddhist ability to accept the fortune of the natural world. What did the farmer say when he won the lottery? I guess I'll just keep on farming until it's all gone. He understood living in beauty. One of our South Island farmers leased a neighbor's field and used the elegant heritage barn to store the hay after he mowed and baled it every year. Recently, the uninsured empty barn burned to the ground. Less than a month later, under a threatening sky, I was phoned to pick up the hay I was buying from him. But I couldn't make it until later that day. I drove onto the field, noting my load was safely under a tarp. The storm had come and gone by then, drenching the field. The farmer was on his tractor, contemplating hundreds of uncovered bales still in the field, ruined by the rain. There hadn't been enough time to get them all covered. He just sat there with a wry smile and said, I guess if the weather had been better last month and the tractor hadn't broke, I could have got all the hay into the barn before it burned down. And here I'm back in the dark, wearing my gumboots. I arrive in the night with fewer answers than when I began. The most I have learned is that living in these moments close to the land is good, and behaving with as much common decency as I can muster is also good. The Tetlet Gwich'in tribe have no word for wilderness. That's because it was not out there for them until recent years. They were living inside the wilderness. You can know an ecology only if you are inside it. I question all authority and the twisted byproducts of reductionist logic, and I rise on a summer morning to the haunting song of a thrush, live with the birds of the day and sleep to the random vocalizations of the night. The plaintive call of the killdeer erupts again from the field. She's on her nest. I almost stepped on it the other day while rounding up the sheep. The male had been doing his broken wing trick a few minutes earlier near the pond, but I'd ignored him. The nest is 4 speckled eggs in a pasture, hidden in plain sight. They make it most of the time. We've seen a few hatches. According to Audubon, people consider the killdeer a noisy bird and restless, but I've always found it beautiful, and its cry in the night is haunting. A companion to the frog chorus of spring. It's a noise against the silence of fate. I'm out wandering again in the blue warmth of a night silvered by the moon. I am only another maggot laughing inside the ecstasy of my community. The high cedars are trembling in the breeze. Ajax, the peacock, shouts me out from his perch in the maple, while Sharon has drank her tea and gone to bed. I leave this story as I entered it, confused and enthralled, in the world, naked again and still alive. I look around me in the dark and I know it's a joke, but it's a good joke. I think I'm home, living on the land. We're in this together, the wild, the domestic, the wormy, the laughing ones and the weepers, black dogs and Buddhas, all of us divine in our diversity, our orgiastic, gorgeous confusion, all of us dancing in the stream of everything. I suddenly feel I'm nearing my end time here, and unfortunately, I promised this poem to somebody. So I would like to read this one and then a brief one to wrap up. This poem was written for Al Purdy, the great poet from these whereabouts here. And Al was, for those who knew him, was a notoriously cantankerous fellow. And he loved to argue. For some reason, he especially loved to argue with me. So he would come over to my place to Trauma Farm in Salt Spring, and he'd be arguing as he entered the door. And he'd be still arguing as he left, right? And his arguments were always interesting. And of course, I drove him nuts because I always disagreed with him. Just on general principle, just to see what he would say half the time, right? Anyways, he's at my farm, and the Trauma Farm is your classic Gulf Islands farm. It's got the peacocks and run down, and the sheep are in the vegetable garden, and the chickens are everywhere, and the geese are chasing the horse around, and various things like that. And a sort of very beautiful pasture going through maple trees and right down to the water where the ferries go by, and so on. And so one day, this comes out of a line that Al just suddenly popped up with as we were sitting around the table looking out over the field. And the poem is called Real Life. Can you imagine it? Al Purdy at the window looks over the farm while the peacock fans a white goose and the evening sun flames on the burnished leaves of the giant maple. Then he turns to me and says, real life, can you imagine it? Douglas fir, arbutus, Gariana oak, miles and miles of them reaching down a blue ocean where illuminated ferry boats glow unearthly in a sea mist. Can you imagine it? Is it real? What's real? You couldn't. You shouldn't. You wouldn't. You might get shot in Salvador. A redback spider could bite your ass. The parrot will say good morning. An igneous rock hardens near the Earth's core. The aliens are introduced to Elvis Presley. Can you imagine that? Yes, I think I could. Elvis Presley always was an alien. For that matter, who could imagine Al Purdy, an aging poet at the window, and is he real? Real life. A trick, a joke, a quest to find which shouldn't exist at all. The spirit, the only part of the body which doesn't survive the atomic swirl of chemical action and reaction. Who could have imagined all of this? Not God in a vacuum someplace near where the Vega galaxy originated. It's too hard to imagine a vacuum with imagination, and harder still to define God as an explosion with such creative flair. The Big Bang invented finger painting. The Lord of the Unreal Universe designed bad porno pictures, encephalitis, 30-foot-long tapeworms. What kind of God is that? What kind of universe is this? Who could have imagined it? Or did it imagine itself? And once imagination was invented, quasars, the Doppler effect, and macrophagia came along real easy. All right? So God had no idea what it was doing when it put the match to the ultimate gas stove, maybe singed its eyelashes back a bit, and shortly after that, the first elephant was born. That's correct. Out of nowhere, a deep and resonant voice announces the creation of a magic universe. It's party time. Real life, I have my doubts. If this is real, what is fantasy? Give me Yugen, give me Duende, the Holy Ghost, holy, 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 and the unholy as well. Among the antique asanas and the polyps, among the horses and the turnips, among the yellow jacket conspiracies, all that has meaning is sex and murder and flesh or greens dangling from the mouth, incretions, excretions, and perhaps a little nap in the afternoon. Among the chlorophyll cells reaching for light, like alcoholics of the sun needing a fix, near the leafless cacti and sad tropics dreamed up by a poet maudit on a cloudy day. A world where AU can be manufactured from PB, where Y plus the square root of 73 times 46 in a 3756 minus pi sin X equals A. where A has no meaning except what we give it, and who has figured out the meaning of meaning yet, and who sings the cantos, and who loves the Mandelbrot equation, Gödel's proof and the Gordian knot, and who has no bones, and who loves her bones, and who is loved for her bones, or at least the meat that surrounds them, and who is the predator, and who is the prey, when we promise ourselves the return of the vacuum called annihilations. Holy the Spirit, and holy those who defy the Spirit. The run, the race, the tranquility, and the run again. Pheidippides at Marathon, Emma Goldman, Newt Gingrich's contract with America, the raven eating the eye of the lamb, Jupiter's moons, Yoruba, witch doctors, and that squash cockroach on a Peruvian highway. Here's to the Cymbidium and Lebenstraum and bonsai, also the Colapa Vanduzzi, a fly I ate accidentally when my mouth was open in the evening. This has been one hell of a ride so far. I wonder what comes next. Oh, the delight in the autumn. Oh, the snow on John Lauder's walking stick. Oh, the light and oh, the dark. And oh, the laughter that lives between the extremes as we rise from our post-Jurassic beds and sing the outlandish sun until our mouths fill with dirt and the mind becomes unreal. And that is also reality. Thank you very much. Al hated that poem. Of course, and he was really mad because he said, you can't put math in a poem. And I said, why not, Al? Which he could never really quite answer.